vision and pay me. It's never to sway me. Indigenous, maybe we winning this crazy. Your opportunity, your opportunity, your opportunity, it's your opportunity, your opportunity.
Welcome to EDI on the Street, where we discuss all things EDI and supply chain. Today, we are opening up the files on a topic that sounds a little mundane, but is secretly maybe the most powerful defense against supply chain chaos. We're talking about the EDI onboarding checklist.
It really is the playbook, and it's something we here at Graceblood deal with every single day. You see companies who've invested so much in modern EDI solutions. They have the platforms, the architecture.
All the shiny new tools.
Exactly. But they still struggle because their onboarding process is, well, it's just ad hoc. So our mission today is to give you a clear roadmap. We want to show why this structured checklist isn't just helpful, but absolutely critical.
It's what turns that big investment into actual ROI and stops all that friction after you go live.
That's the goal.
Okay, so let's unpack this. I want to start with the strategic why, maybe even more importantly, the cost of getting it wrong. I mean, everyone knows manual data entry is slow, but what's the systemic cost of an error that a checklist is actually designed to prevent?
The systemic cost is, well, it's brutal.
Mm-hmm.
It's brutal because it's cumulative. It starts with the direct financial hit. Chargebacks.
Of course.
If you look at major retailers, the penalties for errors in, say, quantity or labeling or timing, all things that come from bad initial data mapping, can cost vendors hundreds of thousands a year.
Wow.
But beyond the money, it creates this operational drag. You end up wasting so much time and so many resources just chasing down disputes, trying to reconcile mismatched inventory.
And that stops your team from focusing on, actually growing the business.
It completely stalls them.
So the checklist, by forcing you to get that structure up front, it's really acting as a kind of insurance policy against all those chargebacks and disputes.
Precisely. It builds what we call a compliant and reliable foundation, right from the very beginning.
And compliance isn't just about the old standards anymore, right?
Not at all. I mean, of course, you have to adhere to standards like in DataSex 12 or EDIFACT. Those are mandatory.
Yeah.
But modern EDI, it has to integrate with a much, much broader digital ecosystem.
You mean things like APIs, third-party logistics providers, the 3PLs, and all the e-commerce platforms?
Exactly right. A structured onboarding process forces you to account for all of these modern protocols from day one. Are you setting up for the high-volume, low-latency demands of an API? Is your data structure clean enough to talk to your 3PL systems?
If the checklist isn't guiding that, you're just kicking the can down the road. You're guaranteeing a huge rework later.
You are.
Right?
And this feeds directly into risk reduction. It has to.
How so?
Well, if we set up automated validation and exception handling during that initial onboarding phase, we're essentially error-proofing the system before it even goes live.
So you're catching things before they become a problem.
That's the key leverage point. We implement really comprehensive data mapping and exception handling before the first real transaction ever moves.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just about catching, data format errors. It's about checking business logic. Does the order quantity exceed the stock you have? Is the requested ship date even physically possible? By mitigating that risk early, you protect your margins, you maintain your vendor scorecards, and you make sure the whole operation scales as those transaction volumes inevitably go up.
Okay, let's talk about the internal friction. Because moving to a fully automated system, that's a massive project. It involves so many different departments. How does the checklist help reduce that complexity for the, say, internal technical teams?
It standardizes the handoff. That's the big thing. Moving from manual or legacy processes, it inherently causes friction, especially between the business units and IT.
The finger pointing starts.
It always does. The checklist facilitates a smooth transition by just eliminating uncertainty. It demands clear, documented steps for the technical setup, confirming FTP or XFTP access, compiling all the IPs for whitelisting. By clearly defining roles and documentation, IT knows exactly what they need to do, and the business units know exactly what they need to provide. It stops that frustrating internal back and forth that kills projects.
Okay, so we've established the why. Risk reduction, compliance, less internal chaos. But if I'm on the technical team, what are the specific, tangible things I need to gather? What do I need to drop on the provider's desk before we can even think about starting? Let's get into the practical what.
Right now we're shifting from the high-level justification to the execution layer, the nitty-gritty. The first demand on the checklist is getting the keys to the system. We need VPN or RDP access, and we need the credentials before we start. And compiling IPs for whitelisting, That's non-negotiable.
Without that access, you're just stuck. Mapping is impossible.
Completely impossible. And it's not just about getting into the network. We have to understand the source data itself.
The raw data.
Exactly. You must provide the internal source and target file layouts. This is the foundation. It's the data schema of your ERP or whatever internal system you're using.
We need to know where the purchase order number lives, what format the dates are in.
Is the customer address one field or 5? It's the blueprint for the entire data mapping effort. Without it, we're just guessing.
What about the human element, the internal coordination? Because honestly, the biggest delay isn't always technical, it's organizational.
Oh, absolutely. That's where defining the organizational chart comes in. We require assembling the internal contacts, their roles, their responsibilities, right up front.
So who's the business process owner?
Who handles the technical infrastructure? And this is crucial. Who is the single designated primary escalation point for any testing issues?
Centralizing that communication, that alone probably saves weeks.
It eliminates those dreaded delays where you're just waiting for someone in another department to sign off on something.
Okay, so that covers internal readiness. But the external side, dealing with the trading partner's specific requirements, that always feels like the real complexity multiplier.
It adds significant layers of nuance. You have to gather all of the external specifications. This means collecting the trading partner's specific EDI specs, their unique IDs, the exact map specifications they need.
Sample documents, communication protocols.
Their full testing requirements. You have to know which fields are mandatory versus optional for their systems, right down to the character limits.
Because ignoring that leads directly to failed validation, every time.
Every single time.
So it's not just about sending an 850 purchase order. It's about making sure that it conforms to their specific business rules, not just the generic ANSI X12 standard.
That is the crucial business solidification step. It goes so far beyond just the data format. You need to finalize the business expectations. What vendor numbers have to be used, what are the agreed upon pack sizes, and what are the fulfillment SLAs, the service level agreements.
Do you have an example of where that went wrong?
We had a client fail their initial launch because they missed a single detail. It was about a mandatory cross-reference setup for ship to locations. A tiny detail.
And what happened?
That one omission created massive shipping errors. It was a disaster. All because one small business rule wasn't solidified up front.
Wow. And as the provider, as Graceblood, when we look at a client's list of partners, what are the big strategic questions we ask to really set the scope, to make sure we build a scalable framework?
We have to focus on context and the future state. So first, partnership history. Are these brand new trading partners? Are they established relationships, or is it a mix?
Because that affects how you'll get the information you need.
Right. Second, we have to understand the channel model. How do you do business with each partner? Is it direct warehouse fulfillment, direct to store, cross-docking, or maybe a dropship model?
Because setting up for dropship, which might involve integrating with a platform like, say, Velosilink, that requires totally different mapping and transaction speeds than a simple bulk warehouse shipment.
Fundamentally different. And understanding that allows us to set up a scalable framework that can support these modern omni-channel models from day one, not as an afterthought.
And a third thing.
Seasonality. We have to know if they expect a huge peak in volume, like a major Q4 holiday ramp-up.
That dictates testing timelines, stress testing.
It dictates everything. How much stress do we need to put on the systems to handle that maximum capacity without breaking? It ensures we're building for reality, not just for the average Tuesday.
That transitions us perfectly into the how long part of this, because once the scope is defined, everyone wants to know the timeline. And if the goal is speed to market, 8 weeks for onboarding can sounds long in today's world. How do you defend that baseline?
You're right to challenge it. 8 weeks is a standard planning baseline for a full onboarding cycle for a moderately complex partner, and we defend it because it forces accuracy.
So rushing it is a bad idea.
Accelerating past this without doing the due diligence usually just means you're sacrificing compliance or stability down the road. You pay for it later.
Okay, so let's break it down. Where does that time actually go? And maybe more importantly, where are the real-world obstacles inside those 8 weeks?
All right, weeks 1 and 2. That's project kickoff and a requirements gathering. On paper, it sounds simple.
But it's not.
In reality, this is often where the biggest delay happens. Just getting internal IT to prioritize and approve the necessary VPN or RDP access. Getting the IPs whitelisted. Finalizing all those external specs we just talked about.
So the clock is ticking, but the first 2 weeks are often spent just fighting internal bureaucracy.
That's often the case, yes. Then, weeks 3 through 5. This is the core mapping, configuration, and internal testing phase. This is the heavy lift. Document mapping, setting up all the cross-references, end-to-end testing within your own ERP to make sure the data is translated correctly and your system can actually process it.
And if there are any questions about the source data, this is where you can lose a lot of time.
You can burn days just trying to clarify things. Then you get to week 6 and 7. This is where the pressure really mounts. Partner testing and certification.
The external validation.
Exactly. This is where we exchange the full transaction set, the 850 purchase order, shipment notice, and the 810 invoice.
A whole flow.
The whole flow. Every single document has to be tested, validated, and officially signed off on by the trading partner. If they find one error in the labeling or the pricing structure,
It sends you right back to the mapping stage.
sends you back to adjust and retest. Only after you get that successful certification do we move into week 8 and beyond, go live, and stabilization.
That 8-week structure, it makes sense for a complex custom integration. But what if a client is dealing with a major retailer? One that has a self-service portal or a really standardized process? Can that shrink the timeline?
Oh, absolutely. Major retailers, they often have streamlined, portal-driven testing that can shave weeks off that baseline. But that's provided your internal data is clean and ready to go.
And you also have to consider volume, right?
Yes, volume is key. Most organizations can manage somewhere between 3 to 10 trading partners in a single onboarding wave.
10 partners, that seems high.
It depends. If you're dealing with 10 partners whose documents are almost identical, maybe they're all using the same 3 core transaction sets, you can definitely hit the higher end of that estimate.
And that repeatable process, that's the definition of the scalable framework. So if 8 weeks is the standard, what are the most effective, proven strategies to accelerate that process without, cutting corners and sacrificing accuracy?
The overarching goal of acceleration is just to reduce the back and forth, the waiting periods.
Okay, so what's first?
First, standardize your documentation. We strongly advise clients to provide partners with a branded onboarding packet. It should have connection methods, test data guidelines, escalation contacts.
It signals that you're prepared. You're a professional operation.
It signals operational maturity, and it reduces the number of questions the partner has to ask.
Yeah.
Second, implement parallel testing where you can.
So instead of a sequence, you do them at the same time.
Exactly. Instead of testing partner A, waiting for sign-off, and then starting partner B, you test multiple partners simultaneously. It requires good internal coordination, but it dramatically compresses the timeline.
What else?
Third, leverage automation. Use tools for automated validation and alerts that immediately notify teams of errors during testing. This just drastically cuts down on rework time.
And the final piece of that puzzle seems like it's not technical at all. It's about centralizing responsibility.
It is absolutely essential. Assign a dedicated onboarding coordinator. This centralized role, it eliminates delays caused by communication, falling into those responsibility gaps between IT, finance, and logistics.
One person driving the process.
One person who is driving the process and chasing down the sign-offs. It helps teams compress the timeline without compromising the quality of the data.
This brings us to our final point, connecting this meticulous, checklist-driven process back to strategic advantage, back to partnership trust. It seems like a clean, structured onboarding signals something really profound to your partners.
It signals operational maturity, professionalism. When you launch a clean system and you pay attention to the details, clean EDI documents, accurate carton labeling, the proper branding on a bill of lading, you are strengthening that partnership.
You're building reliability.
You're building trust. You move the relationship beyond just minimum compliance and into a space of true collaboration.
So that predictable process becomes a core competitive advantage. It's about boosting your digital maturity.
Precisely. Automated and structured onboarding workflows allow your internal teams to shift their focus. They can move from being reactive, from constantly troubleshooting errors, to being strategic, to planning for growth.
Which lets companies adapt faster to a changing market, like quickly standing up new dropship partners.
And that dramatically boosts their competitiveness.
So ultimately, all that deep attention to detail, the accurate data mapping, the strong validation, it all contributes directly to your reputation and to your bottom line.
Absolutely. It builds vendor credibility. When you identify and fix issues early in the onboarding phase, you have fewer costly disruptions after go live. That leads to improved vendor scorecards, better operational performance, and at the end of the day, significantly higher partner satisfaction. The checklist transforms EDI from a transactional mandate into a strategic asset for growth.
Okay, so before we wrap up, what's the one provocative thought you want to leave our listeners with today?
Right, here it is. If reliable EDI onboarding is the key to expanding into new channels and new partnerships, consider this. Which of your existing trading partner relationships, even the ones you haven't moved to EDI yet, which of those could be dramatically deepened and optimized if you standardized your data and business rules against your onboarding checklists today?
So applying the framework even before you need it.
Thinking about that structure universally prepares you for immediate and future market expansion whenever it comes.
That is a phenomenal insight. We've covered the critical importance of compliance and risk reduction, detailed the essential information gathering for both technical and business setup, and broken down the timelines and the acceleration strategies. A structured EDI onboarding process, governed by a detailed checklist, is fundamentally the difference between sustainable, scalable success and just perpetual operational chaos. Thank you for joining us for another episode of EDI Industry.
But this way we indigenous, maybe we winning this crazy. Opportunity, your opportunity, your opportunity, your opportunity.